Hi everybody. Before introducing myself, I'd like to take this opportunity to say Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to our brothers, the Christian in all over the world. I wish you happy life, peace and love. My name is Majeed, an assistant professor at the University of Anbar, Iraq. First of all, I'm so grateful to Dr. Brian for his invitation and effort to have easy access to deliver my presentation via audio-visual slides instead of coming all the way to the Northern Ireland, though I wish to be there physically and meet the academics and the prominent figures in the field of drama and performance. However, my talk is divided into three parts. Firstly, I'm going to give a brief idea about the role of Iraqi theatre after Arab Spring. Secondly, a historical background is introduced to see the stages of development Iraqi theatre passed through. Lastly, I'm going to focus on Abdul Zaidi, a play Summer Rain, to know what kind of themes and trends Iraqi playwrights are after. If you have any question you would like to ask, I'll be very happy to answer at my email il_AUBAIDYMAJEED@yahoo.com. To start with, no doubt theatre reflects life with its ebbing and flowing. During the 20th century, Iraqi developed a significant modern theatre, one of the most successful and productive in the Arab world. A devotedly community of artists and public keep the Iraqi theatre active and alive in spite of the most adverse conditions. The sufferings under a brutal authoritarian rule, a series of devastating wars, an occupation and ongoing civil strife have exacted a tremendous toll not only on the theatre, but also on every aspect of Iraq's society and culture. The censorship imposed on Iraqi theatre in the past time created a new generation of artists who revolt and protest against arrogant politicians. The policy of silencing and marginalization, which is rife in the previous time, is completely denied. So they take on their shoulder the task of renewal. Thus, Iraqi theatre is no longer an institution used to espouse political policies by those who are in the rule. Instead, Iraqi theatre becomes a tool for criticism for any evilness in society. In other words, artists become relatively free to talk. The present paper is an attempt to shed light on the situation of Iraqi theatre after the Arab Spring. A plethora of Iraqi playwrights such as Abdul Karim al-Umari, Rasha Fadl and Abdul Zaidi, to name but few, uses theatre as a powerful means of criticism and reflecting reality. Al-Zaidi play Summer Rain 2012 is taken as an example to show this fact. However, before going into details with the play and to understand the stages Iraqi theatre passed through, a historical background is required, since, to the best of my knowledge, a few Iraqi plays have previously been translated from Arabic into English. Among these plays are The Key and the one-act play Where the Power Lies by Yusuf al-Ali, and Forget Hamlet and Baghdad Bath by Jawad al-Asadi. Recently, however, a volume of 9 Iraqi plays translated from the Arabic is added and published by Bruce Mary Midhin drama in 2017. Modern Iraqi political theatre can be subdivided into the following phases, which are in most cases shrouded by political events. The first phase is early theatre, which covers the period from 1880 to 1908. Modern theatre was introduced to the Middle East in the middle of the 19th century in Syria and Egypt. Those two countries have served as the centers of modern Arabic drama. Its beginning may be traced to Marwan al-Naqash, a modern businessman who wrote and staged his play Al-Bakhil, The Mice, in his house in Beirut in 1847. Although the play is inspired by Molière's play of the same name, His work is original rather than an adaptation. Its musical set makes it not only the first Arabic play, but also the first Arabic opera. In his introduction to the one of Iraqi's dramatists, the People's Theatre of Yusuf Al-Ali, Salam Yusuf determines the reason behind the decline of Arabic theatre if it is compared to the one in Egypt and Syria. These reasons are ascribed to high literacy, limited contacts with the West, the late adoption of modern ideas, and the Nahda Arabic Renaissance, and the conservatism of Iraq society. Iraqi theatre was created by untrained amateurs, and acting focused on oratory and reading of the text as a literary rather than dramatic work. The playwrights were unskilled, moreover developed characters and plot were poorly given. However, a professional theatre emerged in Iraq only during the 1940s, and this was due in part to government support. Indeed, the Iraqi monarchy at this time was supportive to literature and the arts in general. It provided financial incentives for troops and established a theatre department at the Institute of Fine Arts in Baghdad in 1940. Although the first Iraqi playwrights were primarily concerned with religion, interest in politics began as the country entered the 20th century. Early Iraqi efforts included translations, adaptations of Western plays and novels from French, Turkish and English into Arabic. These include plays by Molière. Some of these translations supported Ottoman rule, such as those of Shakespeare's tragedies that depict the negative consequences of challenging the ruling regime, including Hamlet, Macbeth, and Julius Caesar. The second phase of Iraqi theatre is represented by the Forum and Club Theatre, which started in 1908 to 1932. The Young Turk Revolution of 1908 allowed for greater freedom of expression across Ottoman Empire, even as it led to the implementation of unpopular policies. The Young Turk movement began in the late 19th century in opposition to the autocratic rule of Sultan Abdul Hamid II, and culminated in the revolution of 1908, led by army officers. Although the Young Turks disappointed Arab hopes for a more liberal Ottoman governance and instead imposed stricter controls, they did loosen censorship, and in Iraq this led to proliferation of journals and newspapers as well as societies, groups and clubs. The clubs provided a venue for the expression of pre-Arabic nationalistic sentiment in opposition to the empire, and theatre proved a useful medium through which to do so. Touring Arab and Turkish theatre troupes, such as those George Abbad and Yusuf Fahmi, provided inspirations, as did Iraqi theatre scholars such as Haq al-Shibli, who returned home with Western diplomas. Although Iraqi scholars founded the first clubs in Istanbul, the rest were located primarily in the three main cities of Iraq, Basra, Baghdad and Mosul. Although at this time theatre was already firmly established in Egypt, in Iraq it was still an amateur endeavor. At these clubs, local practitioners staged low-budget productions and eventually wrote and produced short original works. The 1920 revolution led to the establishment of the Iraqi monarchy and opened the door to widespread expressions of resistance against British oppressions. In the theatre as elsewhere, the British wrested control of Iraq from the Ottomans during the First World War. In 1920, various Iraqi factions, including Sunnis and Shias, revolted in unison. Although the uprising was suppressed, there were many casualties on both sides, and the conflict proved quite expensive to the occupiers. As a result, they surrendered to Iraqi demands for an Arabic Islamic state in form of constitutional monarchy. Although Faisal bin Hussein assumed the throne in 1921, the Iraq remained a British mandate until independence was granted in 1932. After the 1920 revolution, Iraqi theatre turned to Arabic history in search of glorious and chivalric themes to promote Arabic and Islamic unity, and also raise awareness of the oppression suffered by Iraqis, first under the Ottoman Empire and then the British. The growth of political theatre in Iraq owes much to expansion of the Iraqi bourgeoisie, who had the privilege to travel and witness politics and culture abroad, including Western theatrical practices. Itinerant troops from Lebanon, Syria and Egypt also informed and advanced theatre practice in Iraq during the 1920s. Egyptian troops influenced the development of theatre in other Arab regions as well. From the 1920s through the 1930s, for example, they inspired the formation of theatre companies first in Tunisia and Algeria and then Morocco. Most Iraqi plays during this period were based on historical events and meant to promote Arab nationalism and Islamic glory against Turkish and British hegemony, and staged in defiance of government disapproval and censorship. The spread of nationalist sentiment and a call for armed struggle against the occupiers and colonizers pushed young Iraqis toward theatre as a means of raising nationalist, political and cultural awareness. Poets recite nationalist poems on opening nights in the tradition of the Nahda theatre movement and adapted stories for the stage. Generally speaking, the political plays of this phase were immature, performed by amateurs and students in clubs and schools. In contrast, in Egypt, the government had begun to support theatre in the late 1920s and established a school of drama in 1930. And during that decade, the status of theatre was improved due to the involvement of well-educated practitioners. The other phase of Iraqi theatre started in 1932 to 1958. This is called revolutionary theatre. The next phase of Iraqi theatre begins with the establishment of Iraqi independence in 1932, which continued as a constitutional monarchy as had been established in 1921 under the British, and extend through the termination of the monarchy by means of the revolution of 1958. Political theatre began to mature during this period, especially during the 1940s and 1950s. The pioneers were mostly leftists and Marxists who attempted to incite revolutionary violence against the monarchy by depicting it on the stage. In 1948, popular troupe for performance staged Patri at Masrah al-Malik Faisal, King Faisal Theatre, under the direction of the best-known pioneers of Iraq theatre at that time, whose name Ibrahim Jalal. Many cities consider the production a turning point in Iraqi theatre for both its content and the presentation. For the first time, a play refers to a current political event. In this case, the Portsmouth Treaty, which had been implemented merely 2 months earlier, signed in secret. The treaty forestalled the decline for British withdrawal by 15 years, with a limitless extension in case of war. When details were made public, enraged Iraqis took the streets. The shooting of protesters by Iraqi security forces only heightened the tension. In addition to addressing this topical event, the production employed various new theatrical techniques in the areas of set design, lighting and makeup. The other phase of Iraqi theatre, which is called theatre that depicts the tension between nationalism and communism, which started from 1958 to 1979. This phase extended from Qasim's revolution and the overthrow of the monarchy in 1958 through Saddam's consolidations in power in 1979. Much theatre at this time depicts the power struggle, both ideological and manifest, between the nationalists and communists that dominated state politics, and does so indirectly through symbolism, folklore, mythology and history, in order to evade past retaliations Indeed, this period witnessed the rise to power of the Sunni-dominated Ba'ath Party that culminated in Saddam's rule. Although social realism was the norm in theatre in Egypt during the 1950s, the Iraqi plays during this period present a range of approaches, including the adaptation of folk myths and the adaptation of historical events. In both countries, it was necessary to disguise political messages in order to avoid government retaliations. The growing influence of communism on cultural and political life can be felt in what is perhaps the most influential play from this period. Yusuf Al-Ani, I'm Your Mother Shakir, first produced in 1958 by Modern Artistic Theatre Troupe. The plot is based on an actual event. Shakir's mother has lost her elder son, Shakir, during the resistance against the British. Her second son, Saudi, is arrested and imprisoned for his subversive activity. The playwright pits those who cooperate with the unjust government against those who patriotically resist oppression and corruption, as represented respectively by the uncle and the doctor. The uncle asks Shakir's mother to persuade her imprisoned son to sign a statement renouncing all political activity. Rejecting the request, Shakir's mother asks rhetorically that if students, workers, and women refrain from politics, then who will liberate the country? The play is highly celebrated since it sheds the light on the role of women in this period. On February 9, 1963, the Ba'ath Party deposed and executed Qasim, and Abdussalam Arif assumed the leadership of Iraq. In contrast to Qasim, who advocated Iraqi nationalism, Arif was a Nasrite and Arab nationalist. This is an age of terror. A good example from this period is The Flood by Adil Kadhim, who employs the mythology of ancient Mesopotamia to criticize the political and economic situation in Iraq. During the 1960s, Iraqi playwrights followed theatrical developments in Syria, Egypt, and Morocco, and like practitioners in those countries, attempted to develop a distinctly Arabic form of theatre. As in Egypt, they frequently employed a narrator as storyteller and dramatized stories from Turath, a cultural heritage and tradition including beliefs, letters, history, folklore, and the fairy tale. European theatrical techniques were nevertheless incorporated in this effort. The dramatists relied heavily upon the methods of Erwin Biscotta, Peter Weiss, and Bertolt Brecht. As in Egypt, the 1970s witnessed a decline of theatre in Iraq due to increased governmental oppression, as the Ba'ath Party disapproved of its predominantly leftist inclinations. The regime frequently intervened days or hours before an opening to ban or censor the play in question. The situation worsened toward the end of the decade as the government increased the pressure on the left. Theatre professionals were imprisoned, a troupe disbanded, and theatre houses closed. This leads us to another kind of theatre, which espouses a political rule. This period is called theatre under Saddam, which started in 1979 to 2003. Practitioners of theatre under Saddam's rules, which started from 1979 to 2003, of necessity exercised extreme caution in order to evade retaliation. Serious theatre consisted mostly of staging of Western classics, such as Shakespeare, or adaptations of traditional Arabic tales presented in standard Arabic. However, during this period, Iraqi theatre can be classified into three stages. The first stage started from 1979 to 1980. After the Ba'athist regime defeated its political rivals, Iraq became a slightly more open society, both culturally and economically. The government allowed the establishment of new theatres and formed national theatre groups in Baghdad and other provinces. Theatrical producers dared not challenge the regime. Their unwritten mandate was to bolster the spirit of Iraqi nationalism and Ba'athist ideology. The second phase started from 1980 to 1988. In this period, the war with Iran precipitated a political shift, and three types of theater took the stage. The first one is agitprop theater, and this production glorified the war against Iran. They urged citizens to participate in defending their country against what the state called the invasion of the Majus. All these plays in this period are devoted to stand against the danger which comes from the east. The second is commercial theater. In the face of cultural oppression, a number of playwrights and directors resorted to producing light comedies and farces that featured dancing, singing, and joke telling. A good example of this trend is Bayt al-Tin, the House of Clay. The other phase is academic theater, usually experimental in nature. These staging dare to indirectly criticize the regime. These include Salah al-Qasr productions, Sorrows of a Circus Clown, and Shakespeare's King Lear. The third phase of Iraqi theater under Saddam's regime started from 1990 to 2003. In this period, Iraq witnessed grave political and economic unrest during his time due to the invasion of Kuwait, the Gulf War, the Shiite uprising, and the impositions of economic sanctions. Saddam's regimes continued to imprison, torture, and execute its opponents, and all these factors discouraged the staging of political content. Nevertheless, playwrights continued to employ traditional and historical Arabic and Western stories and dramas to comment indirectly. The other phase, which started from 2003 to 2011, which is called theater under American occupation. Actually, most plays written for afterwards address this time period. During this period, however, visions were blurred. The American-led invasions, which occurred in March 2003 and ended in December 2011, with the withdrawal of American troops, created an unstable situation for intellectuals in general. The other phase, theater after occupation, which happens post-2011. Following the occupation, Iraqi dramatists have turned their attention towards their politicians with greater frequency as the fledgling democracy struggles with corruption and sectarianism. Although the national democratic government in Iraq is more tolerant of free speech than its historical autocratic predecessor, playwrights must nonetheless be wary of the retaliations of sectarian militias, which wield considerable influence both on the street and in the House of Governance. Theatrical production is hindered by uncertain security in Baghdad and its environments, and most likely completely forbidden in the area controlled by the ISIS. Although some degree of normalcy has resumed in the relatively stable south, historically theatrical activity in Kurdish Iraq has been rather limited and continued to be so. Now we move to Iraqi theater after Arab Spring. As we know, the revolution of Arab Spring broke out for a better tomorrow for those people who always dream of justice and freedom. But the flood of noble revolutions collided in a way with the wall of current Islamic parties. It turned to a path towards narrow ideological ends and cheap political calculations, in which the Islamic right allied itself with the remnants of reactionary capitalism that revolted against it. The revolutions quickly took their toll after religious groups, which came to power through massive propaganda and false promises that were quickly recognized by the masses, who decided to stand against them. But the rebellious people paid a heavy price for their resources, their lives of their sons, and the goals of their revolutions. Millions of people are killed because of this. I'm going to take Abdul Nabi al-Zaidi Samar's rhyme, which is written in 2012, as an example for the current status of Iraqi theater nowadays. The Iraqi populace has withstood the unbearable, including war, starvation, and imprisonment. It has survived a series of dictatorships and is to this day besieged by corrupt and manipulative forces. It is disturbing to inhabit a society that is confronted daily by killings that are justified by bloody religious ideology. I believe that it is the player's responsibility to respond to Iraqi politics, which have resulted in an environment in which the human being is oppressed and stripped of his or her value. Summer Rain addresses a question that is often posed on the Iraq street: who is real and who is a clone? This question arose after the 2003 war, during which a group of people came from outside the country and started posting about their heroic resistance against the now deposed dictator regime. Ultimately, they seized power dishonestly. Who is real and who is fake among those who have flooded the country with patriotic and religious slogans, and who have disguised themselves in new clothes and hidden behind religious discourse in order to promote their failing and bloody policies? We are confronted with a new phase of power, one that represents something more dangerous than the clearly defined dictatorship did. The play appears to address social concern taking place at a dozen house and between a wife and her multiple husbands. Symbolically, it calls upon the nascent science of human cloning in order to approach the subject of post-dictatorship politics in Iraq. Significantly enough, the title of the play indicates that the bitter fact that democracy and freedom are not real. Both those terms are used as commodities to market narrow ideological policies. The scapegoat was Iraqi people, who still suffer. The dream of changing miserable situation of Iraqi people has gone with the wind, just like Summer Rain, whose effect is swiftly demolished. Thank you for your listening.